sharpest tool in the shed.
Hello, everyone. Yes, it's true. We're a good kind of weird, or at least I like to think so. Thank you so much for having us here today. Like we said, I'm Carly Ayres, that's me. And today, I'm a partner at Ayres, a new design studio based in New York. We're new in the sense that we've been around for just under a year, just long enough to fill up a few pages of Google image search results. You can't see this is a sandwich. This is something we've eaten recently, but not quite so new to be a household name. So we put together this handy dandy diagram in hopes that it will help all of you pronounce Ayres. So it's kind of ha, rhymes with saw, raft minus the T, Ayres. Hopefully that's helpful for all of you. And today, I'm going to talk about interacting with people, or more specifically, how to have a good conversation. Now, ironically, I'm going to do it in the form of this 30-minute monologue, so you're just going to have to trust me and bear with me that I do indeed know how to hold a conversation. And you might be wondering, what does a good conversation have to do with good design? Sure, maybe if you work on teams, you work with clients, the ability to talk to people tends to be a useful skill in those contexts. But today, I'm going to talk about how the principles of having a good conversation translate to designing better experiences for the people that you're talking to. Oh, that's me. See, I talk a lot. Growing up, I used to get in a lot of trouble for being that kid in the back of the classroom who just would not shut up. I was always told I was too loud, too outspoken. And while many of those things very well may possibly, potentially, definitely be true, talking and the deep, insatiable urge to meet people and talk to them has turned out to be one of the most versatile, useful skills when it comes to being part of a design studio and designing things for other people. Now, I got my start studying industrial design at the Rhode Island School of Design, using some of the tools you see here, but could often be found taking classes in everything from ceramics to digital media, graphic design, and more frequently could be found doing a lot of other things that had very little to do with my actual course load. I started a meme blog. I would interview students and other designers about the things they were making. I was part of government relations, where I would talk to people about STEM to STEAM, an initiative to integrate art and design into STEM education. I started an industrial design blog, and I would even bait people to come once a month and listen to me talk as the president of student government, using lots and lots of pizza. It's a good time. And I even had to talk my way out of a few things, like when it came time for me to graduate, and I had more credits outside of my department than within it. I did end up graduating, that's the proof, but what it ended up coming down to was making the case for all that talking and interviewing, facilitating, organizing, all that stuff should count towards a design education. So I kind of had to make the case for why any of that stuff actually made me a better designer. And it's a case I'll make for all of you right now. So the role of the designer is to communicate messages. Design at its core is about communicating to an audience, usually of 2 or more people. In college, there might have been a course called visual communication or communication design. I wouldn't know because I didn't take that class. Instead, I was doing all this other stuff, usually involving talking to people, meeting people, learning how to better convey messages and have a conversation. And similar to how better design makes for better communications, experiences that are designed to be more like a conversation leave your end user feeling more engaged and more interested in the things that you have to say. So quick backtrack, after I did get that diploma and graduate from RISD, I went and I joined the team at Creative Mornings. So if you're not familiar, Creative Mornings is an international lecture series for creative communities around the globe. Actually, one of the very first chapters is here in Stockholm. So if you're from here, you should definitely go check it out. If you're not, they're now in 173 cities, so chances are you probably have one in your own city. But when I joined, that number was 9, and I was the second employee, so very long time ago. But at Creative Mornings, I was able to keep doing that thing I love to do so much, talk. I got to talk to people who were hosting these talks. I got to talk to people who were talking at these talks, volunteering at these talks, serving breakfast at these talks. And while I was there, I learned a lot about what it's like to communicate at an international scale and with people from different cultures and different languages. And during that time there, I learned many things, but 2 things that really stood out to me were 1, every problem is a communications problem, and 2, it's never about the thing. Now, the first one would come up time and time again. Most issues were either a misunderstanding, a misinterpretation, a misalignment of expectations, all which could usually be solved through better communication. The second was just having the awareness that whatever appears to be the problem is rarely the actual problem. The actual problem always is communication. So after Creative Mornings, I freelanced for a bit, writing a lot for different design blogs. I had my own column called In the Details, where I got to get really nitty-gritty, talk to a lot of people, write a lot, as well as a lot of other interview series and newsletters, all of which eventually led me to Google's Creative Lab in New York. And there I got to keep working on some pretty fun projects, like this was the OnHub Makers campaign, where we invited different artists and designers to make these really awesome shells to go on top of the OnHub router, or a trend forecasting tool to help you make sure that you are the only one wearing your very special costume to the office holiday party. And I even joined right in time to help with a few of the launch communications for the logo rebrand, including this flip book that went out on Google's Instagram account. And while I was there, I got to work with some incredibly talented people, including these people, Andrew, Pedro, and Nikki, who are my current partners at Haraf. And after enjoying each other's company so much, we left and we started Haraf. So Haraf was this opportunity for us to try out all these ideas, these theories we had about thinking and working, and put them into the action in the form of a design studio. One of these things was the idea that the communications you put out into the world should invite other people to say something back. Instead of talking at people, at Haraf, we try to make things that invite people to talk back to us, to interact and participate in that conversation. They're things that make people want to touch, poke, talk, click, lick, send, share, and my favorite buzzword of all, engage. You might even call them compelling conversation starters. You see where I'm going with this. The result might be job applications, posters, newsletters, very, very cool t-shirts, installations, activations, or even our own website, but they're always relevant, considered, and invite people to interact in a meaningful way. And in doing so, it's kind of like having a conversation. And a lot of the same principles apply. So if good design is good communication, what makes for a good conversation? Back to the idea that every problem is a communications problem. Like any good conversation, you should have a very clear idea of who you're talking to and what you're trying to say. Now, this might seem insultingly obvious to many of you, but it's something that often gets neglected when it comes to designing for other people. Sometimes you're saying the right thing to the wrong person. Oftentimes you're saying the wrong thing to the right person. Quite frequently, it's this one, you're saying the wrong thing to the wrong person, when ultimately you want to say the right thing to the right person. At a party or perhaps at a design conference, you might luck out. Someone's wearing a name tag, you can go up, you can see Anna in the crowd wearing her name tag. Unfortunately, you can usually figure this out pretty quickly thanks to that, although sometimes it's incredibly illegible and you just can't read it, so you just have to ask them what their name is. And from there, you can ask a few identifying questions, like, What brings you here? Do you like design? Oh my gosh, me too. Fantastic. And then at HRF, this usually takes the form of a working session with our clients where we break out the dry erase pens, the whiteboards, and we start coming up with concepts. We ask questions like, who are we? What do we do? Who do we do this for? What do they like? Do they like us? Quite frequently, there are a lot of the same questions you might ask yourself every day. And then we create a messaging framework before anything else. So if you can see it, it looks a little bit like this, starting with primary, what do you do, what sets you apart, reinforcing that, supporting and validating it. And then it's about good timing. We've all been at that party where that dude comes up to you and interrupts your conversation. Perhaps you were having a really great conversation. He just jumps right in and just starts talking, going on and on and on and on and on some more. Now he just won't stop. Online, it looks a little bit like this. It's not a good look. Good timing and context are fine arts that we as mere mortals may never truly perfect, but I like to think we can avoid doing some things like this. Plus, thanks to analytics and other tools, as well as our own good judgment, you can usually avoid being SpaghettiOs commenting on Pearl Harbor, or Pedialyte getting on that swag. A pop-up for a discount makes sense when I'm on your website. Just like coming up to me at a party at your house makes sense when I'm there. However, I don't need Jamba Juice jumping into my mentions to call me bae. If it works better on desktop and I'm on my phone, shoot me a reminder to go check it out later. Provide me with the things I need when I need them. Or if it's a totally different experience on mobile altogether, create something built for those contexts and the time that people are interacting with it. This is our website, for reasons that will become clear later on. Now, the quickest way to get someone talking is to ask them about their favorite subject, themselves. But the key to these questions is to leave them open-ended. You want to give them something to respond to that doesn't involve a simple yes or no answer. Yes or no questions are the quickest way to kill a conversation. That's another pro tip. I would argue this is one of the most important principles when it comes to having a good conversation. So this is the application for the Google Creative Lab 5 program, which is something that we worked on while we were at Google. At the time, people would apply for this program. It's a one-year program in the lab. There's one in New York, there's one in Sydney, there's one in London. They bring a filmmaker, a writer, a designer, a developer, and a wild card. And previously, people would either be word of mouth or they would find some recruiter's email address in some corner of the internet. And with this application, we really want to try to streamline that process and make it easier for people to apply as well as show a bit of their personality. So aside from your typical form and legal mumbo-jumbo, the application has this cover letter that allows you to do a bunch of different things. So kind of at first glance, appearing like maybe an abstracted version of Google's own homepage, each of those letter forms are actually vectorized shapes. So you can kind of expand and contract. If you double-click around, you'll find this timeline appears so you can animate. If you're a writer, you can use the text box, write a little something, something there. If you're a developer, you can get into the code and unlock various features. So there's truly something for everybody. And the thing is, when you give someone a blank space like this to think outside of or to doodle within, the results are usually pretty wild. When we launched this, we had over 8,000 applicants apply. And as you can see here, this is obviously only the smallest glimpse of that, but everything from this very heavily orchestrated animation to gradients. This is a small replica of Chicago. Awesome. You can learn a lot about someone by what they do with a blank page. and then listen. You nod, you pause, you take time to digest what's being said. Everyone who's had a good conversation knows the most important thing you can do is listen more than you talk, which admittedly is not my forte. But it's important. And then give it back to me. Tell me what I told you. Make me feel like we're building something here. For every input I give you, there should be an equal output that makes me feel that you're paying attention to the things I'm saying. Remember my name. Remember my settings. People want to feel heard. AutoDraw is another project we did while we were at Google that pairs drawings by artists with machine learning to help anyone, anywhere, draw anything. Pretty fun. You can make wonderful drawings like this. But the key to AutoDraw and what people love so much about it is that as you're doodling, your chicken scratch is then being compared to hundreds of thousands of illustrations by other artists and designers. And it's trying to figure out what exactly you're drawing. And it's constantly serving you up these illustrations in hopes that one of them is close to what you're trying to do. Aside from seeing your drawings perhaps become ever so slightly more refined, the reward is in seeing this machine and this algorithm try to match it up and seeing it respond to the things that you do. And because it's constantly learning, the more you come back and the more you visit this page, the more you see it changing and learning more over time. It keeps people coming back time and time again to create wonderful works of art like this. Andrew made this. Very talented. Woo! Spicy. Tone can be a total turn-off or turn-on. If voice is the personality of your brand, tone is the attitude. It can be sympathetic, friendly, saucy, and when you know who you're talking to, you can adjust the tone to match. Tia is a personal, private, chat-based assistant that you can chat with about birth control and sexual health. When its co-founder, Carolyn, reached out to us, she wanted a brand, voice and tone, a personality to accompany Tia as people talked with it within the app. She approached us with the concept, and we worked with her to help define this voice and tone, as well as all the dialogue users would encounter when talking to Tia. Now, people are coming to Tia with all sorts of questions, so the key was to make it friendly and approachable enough to talk about difficult to broach topics, things that you might not feel comfortable talking about with your own practitioner, maybe your friends and family. But it also needed to be serious enough that you would trust this program for advice and information. It's a little behind the scenes of what that looks like. Depending on the context, Tia can sound friendly and sassy. For example, on Frisky Friday, once a week, Tia gives you a bunch of interesting news about pleasure and sex and pop culture. But maybe if the condom breaks, obviously you don't want that. Tia will cut the cute and get right to the important stuff. And it talks a lot. We drafted trees and trees of dialogue for everything from tracking symptoms to picking a birth control, questions about your period. And given our target demographic, gifs and emoji were a pretty big part of this. That's my phone number. And similar, you want to be aware of context. You want to be relevant. You want to read the room. So when Tia launched, it was around the same time as the US election and the Women's March. As an app used primarily by women, Tia couldn't not be part of that conversation or else risk being complicit in another narrative altogether. So the key and kind of what our own task ended up being was figuring out how to be tactful as a brand in that space while simultaneously showing support. So we built a poster generator for people to come and create their own assets, either print them out or share them online. So you come, you choose a background, you choose a message that perhaps resonates with you or add your own, and voila, you have a poster. And what was really incredible about this was when we all went out to March, We got to see people carrying these in DC, New York City, San Francisco, all over the place, which was really awesome. Now, another bad conversation you might be familiar with is the one where you're talking to someone and you don't really know what they're talking about. Perhaps they're talking and name-dropping people you don't know, or they're making jokes or using language from an industry that you're not a part of. The result is you feel extremely excluded from that conversation. So to avoid being the person who does that, use language that makes it easy for anyone to participate in your conversation. We had the immense pleasure of working with artist Tae-yoon Choi on his latest book, The Poetics and Politics of Computation, which there are a lot. Tae-yoon is one of the co-founders of the School for Poetic Computation, also based in New York, where he teaches about accessibility and inclusion within the realm of art and technology. So for us, when it came time to design this experience, we really wanted to make sure that people could engage with it through a range of inputs. Using this panel over on the left-hand side, you can adjust like letter spacing, line height, background, and kind of explore what it's like to read in varying contexts. Perhaps you like reading on yellow. And we also prototyped a few other ways to read. So we used a text-to-speech API so that audio listeners could also read along. You can export different bits into a PDF. Different ways of visualizing length of a text online. So as you scroll, the pages move over with you, similar to perhaps a physical book. And my personal favorite, focus mode, where you can pull these blinders down to only focus on a few lines at a time. This should officially launch in its entirety later this month, so stay tuned. And be authentic. Humans know human. We know what it sounds like, we know what it looks like, we know what it talks like. And in a world of constant clicks and likes and digital validation, it can be really hard to be real. Two people who I think do this incredibly well are Sewei Wang and Taylor Levy. They're the husband-wife duo behind CWT. It's an artist practice based in Brooklyn. They have a CNC machine in their basement, and they make all these really wonderful, high-quality, well-considered goods. So everything from, your classic TV wheelbarrow, everyone needs one of those, to the single brass knuck, these very highly over-engineered pens, and a stopwatch that runs forever, kind of like a don't stopwatch. And when they came to us for a website, we gave them an identity system to match. For us, it was really important to show that authenticity of these two people behind the brand, just these two people making lots of things. They were also kind of reaching a juncture where they were trying to figure out what would be an identifiable style. Did they need to be art directing their photo shoots more? But we wanted to make it easier for them just to share raw images, showing that process, showing their prototypes, showing everything that they were working on. So we came up with a system that can be applied to all of their images and still work as kind of a visually cohesive identity out in the wild. It consists of a project dot, a project ID, and a project author, a nearly infinite system. And both are generated through a series of analog and digital inputs. So we built an app as well where they could do this either at the beginning of a project to apply it to existing projects. At the beginning, they might take a photo, and they choose Sewei or Taylor, whether it's useful or not useful, hard or soft, quick or long, human machine, and the classic form or function. Then add their image, and voila! They apply it to their image, it's ready to go. So by being real, you're able to kind of see these people behind the product, and you have a stronger bond to the makers who are making these objects as well. And simultaneously, if you're a super fan and you understand the idea behind this labeling system, you can start to break it down and try to decode what exactly they're making, perhaps before they're totally finished. So as they're going, they're sharing these images on social, and you're able to see everything from the paper prototypes and truly see the amount of work that goes into a project like this over time. Again, increasing the value of that object once you finally have it in your hand. You can see it collected on their website as well. All the identity tags are also hashtags. And then all the way to your shopping cart. Now, personally, I would never tell any one of you to smile, because there's nothing I detest more. But metaphorically speaking, smiling and making good eye contact are really great physical indicators that something is going well. It's a good sign that perhaps, I like you. Let's do this again sometime. Kind of conveying that through facial expression. We had the opportunity to take a very literal approach to this with a dental client we worked with this year. This is a campaign we did as it launched in new cities, where we applied smiles to everything. The concept was around bringing smiles of all shapes and sizes to your city, and hopefully to your face. So bus stops, buses, we even prototyped these interactive posters involving kind of a reflective surface with smiles adhered onto them, so you could add a smile to your selfie, and of course to your messages. Aww. And lastly, you want to leave space. The key to creating compelling conversation starters is to really leave room for someone else to then fill that space. This is our current website on desktop, clearly why it's a little more difficult to translate to mobile, where users can touch, poke, talk, click, lick, send, share, and engage. Hi, Nordic.design. And it has all these other elements you can interact with too. So you can play tic-tac-toe with a bot, you can connect the dots, you can draw some smiley faces, draw your own meme, and even write in these little boxes something that you'd like to work on. And it takes whatever you write there and uses an API to translate that to text, which is then populated in an email to our studio. So if you want to work on a spaceship, we can make it happen. And again, when you leave a blank space like that, people tend to fill it with all sorts of things that you would never expect. As you can see here, we have taxi driver, a documentary, a logo, an island, a nonprofit concept in Chicago. But yeah, all sorts of things. So pretty exciting to see these roll in, some more promising than others. I look forward to building this island soon. And while the technology is constantly changing and evolving, these principles about how to have a good conversation mostly stay true. At HRF, we're constantly exploring new technologies and ways of communicating. Last year, we also did a project where we made 26 things over 26 hours as a way of demystifying our creative process. We knew we wanted to do it in front of a live studio audience as well, so we wanted to explore live streaming in all of its glory, every hour, a brief. Well, this is actually our cameras. We had a lot of different live streaming technology. We tried Facebook with Mevo. We had Eagle Eye, which was an iPad taped to the ceiling, and all sorts of different things. Ideally looking for things that could live stream for the full 26 hours, as well as be relatively inexpensive. People could tune in, they could swap between these feeds and watch us toil through the evening. And then every hour from attached to zigzag, one for every letter of the alphabet, we would respond to a brief, and we would try to make something according to that word that would come out of the dictionary. So attached, maybe we did a photo series, but we did everything from a hailstorm of confetti, typefaces. We made films, measuring instruments, music videos, architecture. This is a dink bar. It's kind of like a kind bar. We made a lot of things. Social media, through these live streams, also let us engage with people all over the world. So just about like 4 a.m. when we were really struggling, Shelley Walker tuned in from Australia to say hello, which is pretty fun. And we'll be doing a lot more of this in the future too. So stay tuned, more to come, more live streaming. Now, the hard thing about being a talker is knowing that every conversation must come to an end. But I'll leave you with this. Go out into the world, try to design things that feel like conversations. Ask people what their names are, leave space for them to fill, smile or don't, and we can continue this one after this. Thank you.